welcome to India Tonight. I'm Shribani Gharat. Now, the big story that we're tracking, of course, is the progress on the India-US trade deal. And India and the US are edging closer to the 24th July deadline on 10% tariffs, and talks over the India-US trade deal are still underway. Union Minister Piyush Goyal has dismissed reports that stated India is holding the deal and has asserted a mutually beneficial deal is being worked upon. My colleague Sumita gets us more details on the status of the India-US trade talks.
That's right. The framework deal is ready between the United States and India, and it will be signed at the right timing. That's the word that's coming in from India's Commerce Secretary Ajay Dua. He says that the understanding on both the sides is amply clear and trade deal talks with the United States are progressing well. India is looking at a comparative advantage, a preferential market access. He also said that talks are currently on with respect to the larger bilateral deal. They are also happening, and he doesn't see any challenges on that front either. He says that all aspects related to the trade deal will get addressed to ensure that there is sustainability in the trade deal. And this, of course, includes investigations that are related to Section 301. And he says that it is important to have sustainability in the trade deal. So, of course, the decision of what really happens after July 24th, which is when the 10% tariff imposed under Section 122, that really ends. So he says the decision of what really happens after July 24th on tariffs and trade architecture, that resides with the United States. Now, on USTR hearings, which took place a couple of days back, he says that there were two sets of investigations that were on. In fact, one set is at an advanced stage, which is related to labor. And of course, India has submitted its response on that front. And he says that the final investigation report can be expected to be out this month. Meanwhile, what's really happened is that Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has dismissed reports around the US-India trade deal, which says that India has rejected any quick deal. He says that I had fantastic meetings with USTR Jameson Greer, USTR, when he visited Delhi in June, and both sides reaffirmed their commitment to an agreement that is balanced, that is commercially meaningful, and delivers tangible benefits for businesses, for workers, for farmers and consumers in both the countries. And he also reiterated that the teams on both sides, they remain fully engaged in achieving this objective.
Well, to discuss this and the timelines and the India-US trade deal, we are now joined in by Abhijit Mukhopadhyay. He is a senior research consultant at Chintan Research Foundation. We also have Jayan, Krishna, senior fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies, and we are joined in by Ajay Dua. He is the ex-Commerce and Industry Secretary, Government of India. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today on ET Now on India Tonight. First, over to you, Mr. Dua. If the framework is truly 99% ready, what are the specific, operational and legal, sticking points over here that is delaying, or taking it over to the finish line, across the finish line to 100%?
Thank you for having me in this discussion. I think it was never really at 99%. Whatever might have been claimed by the US ambassador to India, that it's 99% ready, and we've been hearing that figure for quite some time now. Yes, as a diplomat assigned to India, he would like to see the deal come through. In terms of diplomatic language, probably he was right, but not realistically on the basic issues which remain to be resolved for quite some time. And these have been, as you know, that the biggest of these was the market access which the US wanted for its agriculture, dairying sectors, and which has the potential of swamping the small and marginal farmers of India, the dairy farmers, as well as the agriculturists. So we had drawn this red line a long time ago, not just with the US, with all the countries with which we have done FTAs, and at the WTO, when the rules regulations were prepared. I remember way back in 2005, also at the Hong Kong Ministerial, exactly the same stand was taken by the Indian minister concerned, had said, for us, agriculture is not
right.
commercial thing. It is a way of life.
It's a way of
And
life. Let's go over to Mr. Abhijit Mukhopadhyay and get his reaction. Also on the comments that were made by Minister Goyal, saying that he has in fact maintained that national interests will not be compromised for quick timelines or short-term gains. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, we have July 24, the deadline staring at us in the face. How do you read these comments?
I think this is a very realistic kind of a comment, I would say, because, this actually it conveys that on the sensitive issues of agriculture, dairy, and not many people are talking about textiles also, because there are, kind of problems there also as well. And also medical devices. So obviously, I think India should not, and India probably is not going into a situation where, in fact, anything big can be compromised in these kind of sectors. That is number one. Number two, what I believe is that nothing much has changed since the last time, the USTR representative Greer came in, and then they had an elaborate discussion. And then this 24th July, if we start looking at it as a race, before the deadline, we have to get into a kind of a deal. I think that is not the right way of looking at things. Third point, what is linked to this point also, that essentially I think what the government officials at this point of time did was, and also, Honorable Commerce Minister, that ultimately we have to, temper our expectations and let us not get into a situation where just to meet the deadline of 24th July,
absolutely,
we get something which is uneasy.
Right. Let's go over to Mr. Krishna. And thank you so much for patiently waiting for your turn, Mr. Krishna. But help us understand, will we meet the July 24th, the deadline at all? Does it seem likely now? And if we don't, then what is the fate of the negotiations going forward? Will they continue, or there will be a temporary pause? What will happen?
I think negotiations will go on, and negotiations just don't happen when two parties meet, on a negotiating table in Delhi or in DC. Negotiations go on all the time, while, this time, what I've seen last time when, USTR, Jamieson Greer had come to India and he met Piyush Goyal, our Minister for Commerce. I think both have remained tight-lipped, and whatever they have said, they have talked about positive stuff. They have said it has to be a balanced deal, commercially meaningful to both the countries. There have to be tangible benefits for all stakeholders like businesses, farmers, workers, consumers in both countries. But the fact is, some of the outstanding issues which especially on the agriculture imports from the US exporting this stuff to India. I think those remain, especially with regard to corn, soya, cheese, and so on and so forth. I think there, a complete agreement has not happened, despite the fact that Commerce Secretary Ajay Dua has said there's no obstacles left. It's a very, very well-structured deal, just waiting for the right time to sign. But I think these issues have not been sorted. Otherwise, it's beyond anybody's imagination why it is not getting signed at all. And let's not forget, few months ago, we were we had announced that the deal is done, and where the major ingredients were that India had agreed to lower tariff on US industrial goods, some of the agro products like nuts, fresh fruits, soybean oil, and reduce dependence on Russian crude oil imports. And in lieu of that, US had agreed for an 18% duty on Indian goods, right? So I think we had both countries had announced, but some developments, as we all know, happened, because of which it couldn't get signed. So I think, to my mind, these agriculture product, exports of US to India to have a greater access of Indian market, that remains an outstanding issue. Although both sides are not openly agreeing to that.
Right. Also, both sides are not openly agreeing to the agriculture issue. But Ajay Dua, I would come back to you now. Now, Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal maintains that, the Section 301 investigation is separate from the trade negotiations that are ongoing for the deal to be signed between India and US. But help us understand, can a commercially meaningful deal or a pact still will exist going forward with US if we are still, if US still applies that 12.5% tariff?
I think it's a very strange or a unique situation when it comes to the powers of the US government, US President in this case, with respect to trade. While he cannot levy tariffs as per the Supreme Court ruling, which has reiterated it, without going to the Congress, he has been vested with certain powers under Section 301. That's the one which, when he found his powers under Section 122, having been struck in the court saying he cannot be fixing tariffs without coming to the Congress, he has invoked those powers under 301, which have been vested with the US president for a long time. And those are the ones which he is trying to invoke. He has sometimes in the past, earlier presidents have also, but let's understand, I appreciate that these are for a limited period. For instance, under 301, he has put it on across 60 countries of the world that they are using forced labor. Hence, he can go up to 12.5% penalty for a certain number of days. I believe it's 150. That's been for 5 months. His powers under one clause end under 122. He invokes another. Similarly, he's also got yet another clause of 301 that if it can be established that countries are trying to dump their materials on the US and somebody is able to substantiate it, which means as of now, the trade investigators working under the president in his commerce wing, if they can say, yes, countries have created surplus capacity only to dump USA with cheap goods, he can levy another set of duties.
Right,
so
right.
What is about 10% there? So what is happening? Again, limited period. The question is, given with his powers to continue with the levies expiring on 24th of July, the normal tariff which he had earlier posted at 18%, now it is 10% across the world. He is now trying to collect from here and there how he can continue. So one is the forced labor, second is surplus capacity. But the fact is all that India is seeking, I'll just take a second more of yours, all that India is seeking is that if you are entering into a deal with us, even if it is a limited deal, what low-hanging fruits, tranche one, please forsake your investigation powers. Today we agree on a certain tariff, but if you tomorrow come on at 12.5% extra, then at 10% extra.
So not everyone is on the same table, when it comes to this. Also, Minister Goyal has, flatly dismissed reports of a deadlock as false and baseless. Now, why is there such a massive disparity, Mr. Jayan, Krishna, when it comes to official statements from the ministers and what the media is reporting when it comes to the deadlock and, India holding out for better terms? Why is there such a massive disparity?
See, I think there is a mutual dependence both countries have on each other. See, media can be speculative, it can and unlike what has happened in the last 1 year, I think this time both countries have been very, very they have been very savvy in terms of what to talk to media. So they have not come. Let's not forget, US for US, India is their second largest trading partner, right? And for us, it is so important. It is our largest FDI. US is the largest FDI invested into India, right? So I think it's a strategic relationship that both the countries have, and there is a growing realization that I think but see, negotiations are always give and take. You lose on some point, you gain on some other point, right? And in today's day and age, countries do not necessarily get what they deserve. They get what they negotiate, right? So I think both countries have been trying their best, and this time, they have not been. Nobody has been putting their foot into their mouths, and very 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 balanced approach.
Right.
Everybody has had. If you look at Ambassador Sergio Gore,
Gore, yeah.
he has been very very positive. USTR has been very positive. Everybody has been very
So
very
the optics look good, but final comments from you, Mr. Abhijit Mukhopadhyay, help us understand, given Goyal's assertion that national interest will not be compromised, and the deal will not be rushed, is, India, if I may ask, politically prepared or economically prepared to absorb the friction if right now, given the situation right now, if the deal doesn't go through immediately in the next few months?
Absolutely, because what I believe is that something is on the cards. This is pure hunch on my part. But what I believe is that possibly what India rationally, if we look at the entire situation, then what India can rationally do is that they can request the US that, look, the deal may not be finalized, deal may take some more time, but don't put in an extra tariff, then whatever, had actually happened till the, just, 1.5 months ago also, in the entire year. So, let us not get into that kind of a friction kind of a thing. Let us talk about something like which is bearable. Let's put it somewhere around 10% to, let's say around 15 to 18%. And then let's talk it out. And then another point I want to make, Section 301 is not, presidential power. It is under USTR Act. Since 1974, it is there. It's an umbrella act under which actually they can initiate any kind of, investigation. This time it is about labor. Any kind of unfair practice, whenever USTR feels and they can provide evidence, they can initiate any kind of investigation. So this is a tricky kind of a situation. So obviously, those who are absolutely optimistic about meeting the deadline, I was a little bit skeptical even last time also, even this time also, I will say
Right.
the best possible situation will be to maintain a status quo or, on a lower side between these two countries,
Right.
bilateral.
Right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today on ET Now. Due to paucity of time, unfortunately, I'll have to halt this discussion, but it was wonderful having you on India Tonight.
Thank you.
Pleasure.